Okay, today I'd like to show you how to get started with your carving. To begin with, I have my picture, and on my square I've gone ahead and drawn it, and then I traced it over with a marker. After I've traced it over with a marker, basically what you're doing is you're making a temporary tattoo for your clay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to flip it over onto my clay, and when I flip it over, try to line it up as much as possible. Then what you're going to do is you're going to rub that over on the surface. So when you rub this over, just like if you were putting on a temporary tattoo, you want it face down on here, and then you just rub over the surface a little bit until it transfers. Now, if you're wondering if it's transferring, you can take a moment just to kind of lift it up and see if it's transferring or not. If you see some areas on here that don't look like they're transferring very well, don't take your paper all the way off, just go ahead and put it back down and give that area a little bit more of attention so that you're rubbing it down just a little bit further. All right, now let's go ahead and I'm going to take it off, and I'm going to see what it's going to look like. So as I take it off, there's my temporary tattoo that I've put onto my clay. The next thing that I'm going to do is I need to decide what are the different parts of my clay and what are the different depths. To begin with, this is a fish with seaweed, and I've got little bubbles over here. I'm going to make this right here, which is the background. Nothing's really going on in the background. I'm going to carve that the deepest. My next part over here, which is going to be the seaweed and the border, I'm going to leave that level. So I'm not going to do any carving on it. I need to carve around it. The last thing, the fish over here and the bubbles, I'm going to make those rise up, and they're going to be more three-dimensional. They're going to be the part that I add the clay onto. So this is my low relief, and this is my high relief. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start choosing some tools, and when I choose the tools, usually what I have here is I have all kinds of metal tools that you're going to be able to choose from. Generally what people do is they say, oh, I'm carving, so I need to choose something sharp to carve with. Well, it's actually better that you don't carve with something sharp. Carve with something that's not going to do as much damage. This one's going to claw your project. This one's just going to kind of shovel your project, and you want a little bit more like a shovel. All right, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to start taking out some of the areas here. When I take out the areas, it is best, well, let's go ahead. You know, something else I could have done is I'm going to use this sharp end over here. I'm just going to barely trace on here, and when I'm tracing, how much pressure I'm using is about the same as I would use with like writing on a piece of paper. So I'm not going very deep. This is one of the problems I find. People go way too deep with this beginning part. They think they're cutting it out. I'm not cutting it. I'm just tracing over the lines, just like you would with like a pencil. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start very carefully. Remember, you can always take more off. You can't really it's harder to add stuff back on. So I'm going to go ahead and take this, and I'm going to start carving this area out. When you think about how deep to carve it, you need to make sure that you're not carving any deeper than about halfway through this piece of clay. That's not all that deep. So like I said before, you can always carve a little bit more if you need more off of there. Okay, so I'm carving out the background. Carving my background. So carve out one section at a time, and I'm going close to my edges here, noticing I'm paying close attention to where my drawing is and where it's not. So this is my first area that I've carved out. All right, now to smooth it out some, I'm going to go ahead and take some off going the other direction. And I think on this one, I actually want it to look like water. So in my background here, going in this direction, kind of some water, kind of doing some smoothing it out. So you can see that not everything with your carving is going to use those sharp tools. I actually find that people do more damage with the sharp tools. So find something it's not going to be as rough on your project. All right, so here's the first part. This is the first part of carving your project out. We'll talk more about how to add clay on in the next video segment.